Welcome back, ladies and gents. It's a pleasure tonight to be joined by Brian Dagul from Tottenham on tour. And of course, we've got Jared here with us, and hopefully Anna's going to be joining us very soon. So Brian, it's a real honor to have you on the show. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and let's get it going.
Let's get it going. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be on such an incredible podcast, trying to do so much good. Obviously, Amir, I saw you on We Are Tottenham TV. We have a shared passion and love, or should we say torture, for Tottenham Hotspur. So I saw you mentioned in the podcast, and basically my story, I'm a North London Jewish guy who lived most of his life in England, but went out to Israel originally on a birthright tour. It was my first time ever in Israel because my sister went on the one before. And I was going through a few issues back home. I struggled with mental health, addiction. And I came back and my parents were like, "What did you think of Israel?" And I said, "I'm moving." I loved it so much. So I went out on an open year ticket. My parents said, "Before you move, go out for a year and just see if you really want to do this." So I went out for a year, but I actually only ended up staying 3 months because I wanted to go back home, spend some time with my family because I wanted to make Aliyah. So I went back in January 2005, and by May I made Aliyah, and I was out there till October 2007. 2007. Came back to England, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but I met my beautiful wife in Israel, and she's Canadian. She came over, lived in England for a few years, and I've been living in Canada now for 4 years on December the 1st, and loving life in Canada.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Wait, and I want to get into it a little bit because you said you met your wife out in Israel, and that's what brought you together. So that's a wonderful thing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what made you fall in love with her?
Oh, mate, here we go. So let me just tell you guys, you can't have the movie rights to this story I'm about to tell you because me and my wife have already got them.
Okay. I promise.
So basically, I lived in Eilat for a long time. I was living in Tiberias. I was actually in Tiberias during the war with Lebanon, which was one of the most scariest things the scariest thing I've ever witnessed in my life. And then just before I was going back to England, me and a few friends moved to Tel Aviv. And we stayed in a hostel that is very close to my heart, and I stayed there with my best mate as well, Hayakon 48, which is like the hostel of hostels. I love that place. I honestly... And my wife was there. She came out. She lived in Canada. She came out for a year, and she was there. And for me, it was love at first sight. Like literally, I'll tell you how badly it was. It normally during that time, I was just spending my life at the bar drinking cheap beer, and then going over to Mike's place, right opposite or right next to the embassy. But whenever she was around me, I was like a lovesick puppy. I literally was like all around her. Didn't do anything much, but the first thing I did, and Facebook had just literally during that time, Facebook had just started. Yeah. So we exchanged email addresses, and then when I got back, I wrote her an email confessing my undying love for her and whatever. And she was like, "Listen, Brian, you live in Canada, I live in England. You're an alcoholic, and she's had some issues before with whatever. So it was never going to work because of the distance, but." We always stayed in contact via Facebook. We spoke, like we always commented on each other's statuses, happy birthdays, whatever. And then 6 years later, we always spoke and said we have feelings for each other, but the distance was always going to be an issue. And then in 2013, in October, we had a huge chat on Skype for the first time, and it was about 3.5 hours. And then we both realised, right, we need to do something about this. And the very next day, my wife phoned up, or not then wife, but phoned up to say, "Brian, I've got a surprise for you." And I was like, "What's that?" She goes, "I booked a ticket to come to London." And I was like, "Oh my God." And I was like, "When was it?" And she's like, "Christmas Day." And I was like, "Okay." I was living with my parents at the time, so I was like, "Oh shit, I've now got to tell my parents that someone's coming for Christmas from Canada. Haven't asked your permission. She's coming, like it or lump it." But my parents were fine with it. She met my family. We got on like a house on fire. That was December, obviously 25th, 2013. June the 22nd, 2014, which is also my birthday, I was here in Toronto getting married to her. Wow. It was that quick, like literally within 6 months. Wow. It was that quick, and now we've been married. Last birthday, June 22nd, was our 7 years together.
Wow, that's incredible, man. That's a whirlwind love. Love.
Exactly. And the ironic thing about it as well is early 2013, I lost my grandpa. He was in. She came the December after, but and he was like my best mate. He'd done the speech to me at my bar mitzvah. I idolised him and I adored him. And my grandpa had five grandchildren, 3 grandchildren from my mum's brother, and me and my sister from my mum's side. But my cousin, all the guys had married non-Jewish women, and I was going out with a non-Jewish woman at the time. And my grandpa, he was old school. He accepted it and everything, but he obviously wanted the name to continue and it to carry on, keep him within the religion. And when we buried him, I was still with my ex-girlfriend at the time, or my girlfriend at the time. She wasn't Jewish, and things had happened during my grandpa's illness. I was like, right, as soon as I've got over my grandpa, and I stood at my grandpa's grave and I said, listen, Grandpa, I'm going to be the first Jewish grandkid or son that marries a Jewish girl, and her name is, and I mentioned my wife's name, and a year and a half later we were married.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's wild, Brian. I'm so happy for you and your missus, mate. Honestly, like it's a wonderful, heartwarming story, and I'm really glad you shared it with us.
Well, I always say to my mum and dad, see, I told them I had mental health issues and became an alcoholic so I could find my wife. I had to go down that road to get there.
It all worked out. It all worked out in the end. Mate.
It's no matter how bumpy the road is, as long as you get to the end of it, you know?
Exactly, my man.
That's true. That's very true, Jared. One thing I did want to ask you about, you did mention it there slightly, and I'd like to get into a little bit of these things, is the war with Lebanon, obviously back in 2006.
Yeah.
It was a very, very vicious battle with Hezbollah that lasted for a good few weeks. Rockets were peppering the north, and if you were in Tiberias, I can imagine it was very, very serious and very, very scary. Obviously, on this podcast, we're trying to bring Israelis and Palestinians together, and not just Israelis and Palestinians, but trying to create a more peaceful world.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing around the world there's conflicts raging everywhere, Brian. You know, apart from Israel, Palestine, which has been going on for the last 100 years, we've got Syria, Yemen, Libya, Ethiopia. It just, the list goes
Myanmar.
on. Myanmar, it just goes on and on and on, and there'll be a new one around the corner. So I'd just like you to share maybe a little bit of your experience from 2006 and maybe your advice, you know, because you live in such a peaceful, you know, country, Canada, and it's great to live with that peace and security and have all that in your life. What you think we can do to try and make an impact over here?
So, I mean, to be honest, when I first went to Israel on Birthright, and I went there because Birthright was offering holidays for people that haven't been to Israel to experience Israel and to get more people. My parents used to go on holiday with my sister to Israel, and I never ever wanted to go. And it wasn't because, I don't want to go to Israel because you just heard everything in the news. You just heard it, and it was like, I don't want to go. The risks of going there, and I was like, do you know what? It can't be that bad. And obviously, when I went on Birthright, it's such a different experience when you from England. Like literally, it was a tour guide. It was buses. I mean, I can remember I was going crazy. We were going somewhere on Birthright, and I saw police cars going past with the sirens on. I was like, why isn't everyone separating? They're like, no, the lights are always on. It's when the sirens are on, you got to. I was like, okay, so the little kind of things that I saw. And then obviously when you get on a bus for the first time, like not a tour coach, a bus, you're like, okay, there's that nerves. But then you see the army getting on regularly, and it's like, oh, okay. So I've seen things, but what you don't realise when you actually go to Israel is it gets so over dramatized in the news. It's like things were happening in Israel when I was in Israel, and my parents were phoning me in England to tell me about it. I was like, well, it gets so over dramatized. But the one with Tiberias, oh my good God! So I had moved from Eilat up north for a work thing, and this place put me and my other friend in Eilat. They paid for our accommodation and everything, and we went to bed one night. And then all of a sudden we heard a big bang. Just a huge bang. Didn't know what it was. Then there was a second one. And then there was a third one, which was literally across the road from us. A building just collapsed. Yeah. We were like, oh my God, what the? And this was just like the first day of it. Ran out. I was like, oh my good God. And then obviously being up there was something I just can't even like obviously having the sirens going off. Like I'm used to in Eilat or Tel Aviv hearing the sirens go off, but this was like 18 times a day. And it's just like, oh my God. And just seeing what was happening, it was just insane. And obviously it's insane for me. I mean, unfortunately for people in Israel and the Middle East, it's like second nature, unfortunately. Unfortunately, this is a thing. I mean, when I try to explain to people the amount of rockets that are fired in, but they don't get over the mountains or whatever, compared to it's insane. I mean, that was the scariest time of my life, and I'll never ever forget it. Ways around it. You know what? It's just, I look at this so many times, especially. I mean, I thought about this from England, but living in Canada, and Jared will know, as he was just saying, originally from the States. I can't believe that two countries so close to each other in America and Canada are so bloody different. I'm like, literally, this is the most calmest country in the world.
Yeah.
Like compared to what America deals with gun crime, terrorism, whatever. Yeah. And then you got Canada right next door, where it's like, what are you talking about? Nothing's happening. It's like one thing I did learn when I was in Israel is just how close people are being Muslim or Jewish. It really, yes, you have the fanaticals on both sides, but the majority of people get on. The majority of people work day by day or socialize or whatever, and it's just put over in such a bad way. Such a bad way. And there's you've seen so many documentaries about this issue, not just like you said Palestine, but other issues within the Middle East. And I don't know if everyone of your listeners will know, but there is a English actor who's in my favourite show, EastEnders, and my favourite character, Grant Mitchell, who's a guy called Ross Kemp.
Oh, yeah.
And he does something called Extreme World, where he goes all over the world and does things. And he actually did one on Israel and Palestine. And it's the only one I've ever seen, and I'll share the link with you both so you can watch it and obviously show it to your listeners. I've never seen a more straight down the middle of both sides showing what it's like. And when he was in Palestine, there's not millions, but tons of families have seen it, and they were just saying, we just want peace. We don't want this. We just want to get along. And it's not down to, unfortunately, it's got to the point where both the civilians aren't listened to. It's like literally, it's like the unwritten rule that we're going to hate each other and fight each other. And it's not right. It's not right. It's got to be. The people have got to be listened to. Exactly.
And I think that's key. You've hit the nail on the head right there. The people need to be listened to. And you're right. The majority of people here are peaceful people and want peace. Otherwise, we'd be out there killing each other every day. There would be murders and people would be slapped. But that's not the case. That's not the case. We do have extremists on this side and on this side that wreak havoc. But then the what you call in Hebrew the shulaim, the hard shoulder of society. They're not the people in the so what I think, it needs to be a bottom to top procedure where we as people demand that change from the top, because it has to come from us pushing the leaders for it, because at the moment it's kind of beneficial for everyone the way it is. Oh, okay, they've got their positions in the PA, Hamas have got the run in Gaza, and the Israeli government can continue doing what they're doing and keep planning for the future. What needs to happen is, like you said, it's more of a spiritual thing where you decide to say, okay, we're not going to raise our kids like this to hate anymore. And it has to come from within. And I do think that over the years, I've seen progression, right? So, if you look at how things were 20 years ago or how things were 30 years ago, there has been progression, but it's slow and it's not on a mass scale. Education is a huge issue over here as well. When we don't have integrated education. I know you grew up in London, Brian, and the way we grew up over there in the UK, in London, we had a mix of ethnicities with us. We grew up with everyone from all over the world, and it was brilliant. And we never had any problems with each other. Nobody ever fought each other. If anything, it was cool because you could get to know different people from different places all over the world, try different foods, learn about different religions. And I think that would go a long way over here.
Well,
I'll tell you what,
there's
man.
kind of an issue with that type of education, because part of the reason why we have these schools that have like a Hebrew Jewish school and an Arabic school is partly because because part of keeping your culture and language alive is, education. There's a reason why, in Israel, when we were first reviving the Hebrew language, we had specific schools set up by the community to basically teach in Hebrew, and they're doing it in the same thing in Ireland, and more people every day are speaking Irish. But and it's how do you convince people that we can have both Jewish and Arab kids go to the same school without while also assuading the fears that somebody's culture and cultural identity can be erased just by assimilation?
I don't think you can erase that though from just school. There's Arabic students can take Arabic and Hebrew students can take Hebrew as Chamesh Yechidot, and basically get their GCSE. You can learn the other language as well. There's no issue. I know in Hebrew, in Israeli schools, kids are taught Arabic, but to a very small level. And in some Arab schools all over Israel, there is Arabs that learn Hebrew as well on the side of doing the whole curriculum in Arabic. So there are things that can be done within an educational framework to add languages in. I don't know if you know, but in certain countries, they have even 3 or 4 languages. The Swiss, they know a few languages over there, and I think that will just be of benefit to everyone because Arabic's a widely spoken language, and Hebrew is obviously very important for us for keeping up the culture and the religion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me use Canada as an example when it comes to that, because I'm just trying to find a way around this. But in Canada, you have both English and French, right? They're two official languages. If anything has to do with the government, it has to be in both English and French.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in Canadian schools, in Anglo Canada, people are learning French in school.
Yeah.
How many Anglo Canadians are actually competent in French? It's really only French Canadians and Quebec and the Quebecois especially who actually learn French, and then those people who somehow get through to being able to be bilingual, who mainly are Quebecers, they end up being the people who always end up as prime minister.
Like Trudeau.
Yeah. Well, I mean, exactly, like Trudeau. And I'm kind of worried about this about that same situation here in Israel, because not only do people in Israel they already speak both Hebrew and English, by the vast majority of the population.
Yeah.
We're going to add on another level to that, where people end up having to learn 3 languages in school. I just think that's going to create an enormous bar of entry to people participating in just the government.
I don't know. I disagree, man. I disagree. Why would learning an extra language be of any disadvantage? I don't really see
I'm not saying it's a disadvantage. I'm saying it's a huge advantage. I'm saying part of the issues of learning a language is that if you don't live in a situation where you have to use that language that you learn in school, you're going to end up forgetting it. That's why most of those Anglo-Canadians don't speak French, because they don't live in a French-speaking community or around a French-speaking community. They use English all the time everywhere.
You know what, Jared? Get right. Taking the language out of it and going back to what Amir said about mixing with the religions, having Jewish and Arabic people going to school, or Muslim people going to school together. My parents always wanted me to marry a Jewish woman. It was you marry a Jewish woman, you marry a Jewish woman. Later on in my life, they relaxed it after my mental health addiction, but it was always their goal. Like every religion has, they want to keep people within the religion. So I turned around to my parents later on in life and said, listen, if you're so fascinated and so wanted me to marry a Jewish woman, why didn't you send me to Jewish school? We have We have a lot of Jewish schools in England and other religions, but obviously I know a lot of Jewish schools. But my parents said exactly what Amir said. Because it's such a multicultural society, we don't want to pigeonhole you with just being around Jewish people, because you're going to grow up mixing with other people throughout your life, and you're going to have to not learn their culture, but you'll feel kind of like, oh my God, I've never seen a Greek person, a black person, a Chinese person. I've never associated, oh my God, but. And I think that's more key than the language. The fact that they're so separated is like when very religious Jewish people have a wedding and the men sit on one side and they don't dance. But it's kind of like that, but you're starting it at birth. It's like you go to school, they're Jewish, they're Muslim, you stay on this side, and it shouldn't be that way. If you want to have it, like, I'm not saying like England. Believe me, England is a very racist country at the moment.
Has it ever not been a racist country?
Yeah. I mean, from my growing up as a kid, you don't even notice it.
Yeah, of course.
What I have noticed during my adulthood in England, it has got a lot worse. I mean, even my wife got racially abused because they thought she was American. That's how clever the racists are. They just hear that accent and automatically think you're American. But if you start it from school, where everyone is mixing together, it takes away that stigma. Or not, I don't want to call it a stigma, but you know what I mean? It's kind of, okay, I've mixed with these people. I've mixed with not just Jewish people. And I like them. I get on with them. I have things in common with them. It's not just, I follow this religion, you follow that religion, we cannot be friends. Look at Greece and Turkey. I know so many people, especially back home, where there's a huge Greek and Jewish community. They all get on absolutely perfectly.
You're right. And I think, it has so many benefits. I'm so glad and lucky that my parents decided to move from Israel to London. And I'm very grateful for having my education over there. I think it's really helped me in my outlook on things and the way I look at things. One of the things I was also kind of not worried about, but wanting to ask you about, Brian, is moving from England, Canada, Israel, what are the kind of things that you take from each country? And if like each country has kind of left a mark on you in a way, and there's certain like love that you have there or kind of feelings towards a certain place.
So England, we'll deal with England first, because obviously it's home. I mean, Canada is home, Israel is home. I get homesick of two countries when I'm in one. But yeah, I mean, England, obviously, I love the country. I mean, you just got to. Perfect example when we lost the Euros final, and then the race. I just knew, every England fan knew what was going to happen after.
We knew,
and it was just. I mean, I had left the pub that I was in Canada to go to Bryan Islands to do the podcast. And I said, within that walk, you watch, England will explode by the time we get. And it did. And it's things that, and I even turned around on the podcast. I said, you know what? I'm embarrassed and ashamed to be English, because things like this will continuously happen. But what England has done for me, I mean, put it this way, whenever I'm at home or here in Canada and I see like the Thames or they show Buckingham Palace, for that like 2 seconds of a heartbeat, I get so homesick. I'm like, oh my God, that's home. Oh my God, I miss my family. But I miss England because of my family and friends. And as I was just saying to you backstage, I only go back to see my nephew, obviously my family and friends, but I've got 4 nephews and a niece who are my world outside my wife. And I miss them terribly. So literally, I go back home to England, and after like 10 days, I'm like, can I just get the hell back to Canada? I'm sick and tired of this place. It's not the England I know. It's not the England I know and grew up with. I mean, I love my country, but it's just not the same. Israel runs very, very. I mean, like I said, I didn't go for years. But what I got to see, obviously, when you go on Birthright, you go to the Kotel, you go to climb Mount Masada, you go to you see like the gems in the. You see the gems in the crowd,
all the sites and all the postcard shots that want you to see.
Exactly. I mean, when you see that first, and that's what first of all made me say I'm moving to Israel. It's just so beautiful. Israel. I mean, people that haven't gone to Israel and are interested. I had a Turkish friend who really wanted to go to Israel. And you know what? He had a week off a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to go backpacking. He went and stayed at the hostel I told him to go stay at. Yeah. And he loved it. He loved it. He did the Jewish part, being Turkish. He went and saw the Muslim court, and he goes, Brian, do you know what? This country is just breathtaking. It's breathtaking.
It
really is. I mean, like I said, I met my wife there. I met my best mate in the entire world. Lived 10 minutes away from me. Was 4 or 5 years younger than me. Never seen him in my life. Never. Go to kibbutz with him near Beersheba. The very next day, he's in my kibbutz in my room. And it's like, I mean, they always say it with Israel, like the 6 degrees of separation kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Some of my best times of my life is in Israel. And what I learned from Israel as well is obviously on a good side and a bad side. I mean, my parents even said, because I had anger management issues, when you go to Israel, people aren't like England where they say please and thank you for opening the door. Or I saw it the first time. When you get off a flight at Ben Gurion from Ilal and you go to wait for the carousel, you could be at the front, but within 30 seconds you're pushed right to the back. And I'm like,
lines do not exist in this country. You have to fight for every inch, and God help you if you have to square up to one of those old Jewish grandmas. Their elbows are knives, and they are using them.
Oh, no, not just that. I mean, even when it came to comments, I mean, that didn't bother me. But what I couldn't understand is when you're getting on a train in England, the doors open, people come off, people go on. It's that simple. Yeah. Whereas in Israel, it's like, no, we'll have a fight. It's like a rugby scrum. It's like, let's have a fight to see who gets on.
Look, that's one of the things that I actually love about this place, because America is not that big on lines like you guys are over in the UK, but lines are still a concept and they're respected in America.
Yeah.
But like when my first trip to Israel, I was getting on a bus with, God, I can't remember. I think it was my aunt. At the time, I was still a kid, and I'm expecting it to be like the school bus. Everybody's lining up to get in. Like nope, just rush. That was one of the most interesting things to me, and it still fascinates me to this day. It causes issues when I go back home, and I forget how to use lines.
it is crazy. Another thing that I don't miss from Israel is, and I used to love doing this when I had my. Was it Tuzahut? What's it called? Your ID card?
Tuzahut.
So I remember whenever I used to get in a cab in Eilat or anywhere, and they heard my English accent and they thought they could rip me off on a cab ride, and I was like, no. I was like, no, you don't. And I flashed the card, and I was like, So I was like, but things like, but Israel, like I said, the best thing it ever did for me, it brought me to my wife, and I will never ever, like when parents split up and they go like, listen, I still love that woman or that man, they're the mother or father of my children. Israel to me will always, and I even said to my wife years ago that there's nothing more I'd love to do when we retire, to go back to Israel and live on a kibbutz or somewhere. Israel will always have a piece of my heart. But what I did learn from there as well is inner strength within inside me. It brings it out in you in Israel, because of whatever's gone on, you learn a lot about yourself in Israel, a lot. And in Canada, do you know what? This honestly, it's the greatest country in the world. I honestly,
heavily debated. America Junior.
Yeah. So, one thing, I mean, you know what it is as well. You know what it is as well. England, as you all know, Amir, we are so hustle and bustle. Everything's go. Mm-hmm. And even if you're at a bus stop in the morning and someone says hello to you, you're like, who the F are you talking to? Why the hell are you talking? It's like, and that's what my wife found it so hard. We came here, the people are the most friendliest people in the world. I'll give you a prime example. I came out here in December 2017, and I met one of my best mates on Kibbutz Yovata, and he lives here in Toronto. So I was going to see him, and I'd literally just come out of the my wife, and I'm hopeless with directions, hopeless. Especially over here when they say north, south, east, west, 10 blocks left. I was like, up, down, left, right, go straight for this long. She literally wrote out step-by-step instructions, like walk outdoor, go to end of driveway, turn left. Like that's simple. So I started walking, and this phone had a cracked screen. So I asked this woman when I was a little bit down the journey. I said, am I going the right way? She goes, oh, you're not from here, are you? I was like, yes, my accent, I'm from England. My wife's Canadian. I've just got here. I need to get from here to here. Am I going the right way? She goes, "Oh, do you know what you are? But do me a favour. I'm just walking the dog. Let me put the dog in. I live there, and I'll give you a lift."
No
I was like, "I beg
way.
your pardon?" This was like a middle-aged woman that never met me in my life.
No
So
way.
let me just put the dog away, and I'll drop. I was like, "You'll never, ever, ever, ever get that." In. Like, if someone said that to you in England, you're like, "Jog on, off you go."
Yeah.
It's just better. Even at the bus stop, like I say, it's like, "Hello, good morning." Everyone's it's so friendly. And then when you look at it on a bigger picture, and I say this a lot, I think not just Israel and the Middle East, the whole world should take a good look at Canada. Because no matter what goes on in the world, you never, ever, ever hear of like these big things, like a mass shooting or a bomb or a what? Never, ever with Canada. They're like this. Like it's such an open and accepted country. Like there's like with the LGBTQ community, unbelievably welcomed. But like literally, like I mean, Israel is fantastic at it. England are getting around to it, but Canada, as open as anything. There's like we have in England, you have Portuguese area, Italian, whatever. Over here, it's little Italy, little Portugal, little India, and it's not like you can't go in these areas because it's just this country is incredible. I never ever want to leave Canada. Seriously, I never ever. Like I said, the only time I think I ever lived back in England is when my parents are getting old and it's about to happen or whatever, and I need to be there for my sister and my family, obviously. And then the second the morning, I'm straight out of England because I love Canada.
Sounds like we need to come over for a visit, Brian.
Oh, big time, mate. My door is always open. Always. Just let me know your flight time. I'll be at Pearson waiting for you.
No worries. No worries.
If I could go on a bit of a tangent, Brian, have you ever been south of the border though?
So okay. So
I just have to know my national pride.
So I have been to America 3 times. But when I say 3 times, the first time was when I got my permanent residency approved from England. When I got the official documentation, I had to go out of the country to come back in to do my landing. So we went to Niagara, hopped over to Buffalo, did like a little bit of shopping, and then hopped over. We did that the second time as well. But the only other time I've been to the States, and as a recovering alcoholic and cocaine addict, going to Las Vegas on my mate from Kibbutz Yavatar, going to my mate from the Kibbutz from Yavatar's bachelor party to Las Vegas was probably the best and worst decision of my entire life.
Yeah.
Because going out to Vegas is something you have got to see. I mean, you see the stories, but you go over there, and but what I was over there during that time, I literally was the hook for all the guys, because if they ever got talking to girls who liked the English accent or girls that were English, it was like Brian. So I came over and did my wingmanship. But yeah, I mean, there's places in America I'd love to go to. Like I've got very much into the NFL. I used to like it, but now I'm here.
So you love the NFL, huh?
I love the NFL. I'm a big time New Orleans fan. I'm a Saints fan.
Not Eagles. We can't be friends.
What a shame. I mean, well, I'm sure there's other things we'll be able to come friends with. Although definitely not baseball, as you were just talking about before. But yeah, the NFL. I'd love to go to Louisiana. I'd love to see San Francisco. There are parts of it I'd like to see. New York, obviously. But yeah, Canada to me is just you can't beat it.
Yeah. I mean, I love the comparisons between America and Canada, because, like, to me, as an American, someone who grew up in the States and is very American, as anybody on this show and any of my friends can tell you, I'm like the most American guy they know. I don't see much of a difference between life in Canada and like life in America. I mean, like, even when it comes down to the policies, like where I've heard some people say, "Oh, I mean, Canada's so different. Like we have Quebec." I'm like, Quebec is just your Texas. Yeah, the part that always wishes it was its own thing.
The health system's better here.
Yeah, the health system is very better. I mean, just for residents who are insured, like part of the whole system, I mean, like, I always talk about that whenever I go back to the States to see my family. One of my big things that, like, I will miss about Israel is not having to worry about healthcare. Like, I get hurt here, I just pull out my Klalit card and
Exactly.
it goes onto that. Very little comes back to me. But yeah. No, I don't know. I always think back to America, and I'm just going back to the thing where you said about like how small of a world Israel is. Like where the state I grew up in, Delaware, it's probably why I'm so comfortable in Israel, because Delaware is so much like Israel, and that it's a small state where everybody knows somebody else somehow.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like hell, I know the president. He's from my state. He was a senator from my state for like 40 years.
Wow.
I've actually shook the man's hand back when he was a senator. But
there you go.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just like that small world, small town kind of thinking. I guess like Israel has like a similar mentality, and I guess I don't know. That just kind of helped me integrate here. You know what I mean?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, one of the things I couldn't believe when I was in Israel as well is the holidays. Is because obviously in England and other parts of the world, Jewish people honor the holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, whatever. But obviously, how thick and fast the holidays come. But the biggest shock to me was Yom Kippur, and literally how dead the streets are. I mean, like literally, it's like I honor the fast. I always do it. And literally, we were walking about. It's my first Yom Kippur in Israel, and living in Eilat, and literally, I just saw kids skateboarding down the roads or lying like right in the middle of the main road. I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
It's Yom Kippur.
It's Yom Kippur. And then I saw one car that drove past, and let's just say that car weren't on the road for long.
That like the Yom Kippur in Israel has become like an Instagram phenomenon now, where like people will just take pictures of them lying down in the middle of the highway. Like
it's crazy.
Yeah. So that's not something you can get anywhere else in the world, you know, only in a country full of Jews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Holocaust Memorial Day and that one is for me. That one's the one that always gets me. You know,
I'll tell you that day, Amir. I mean, as I said, and I openly admit, when I moved to Israel, I was an alcoholic. When I did Birthright, I did Birthright in 2004. So that was in July, August. In January 2004, right at the beginning, I was put in a mental health ward because I was obviously going through some issues, and I spent 3 or 4 months there. And then I came over to Israel on Birthright. Obviously, I had to get some tests done to prove that I'm okay, and I did. And I was still drinking heavily then, but it wasn't to the stage it was a few years later. And I got drunk pretty much every single night on Birthright. And for me, Birthright was also to meet some Jewish girls. In all honesty, that was the main. Let's be serious. But then what happened? I've always, no matter what, whenever it comes to that subject, I always give it the absolute utmost respect and never ever. And there was a day that we were going to Yad Vashem, and before we went to Yad Vashem, we had a Holocaust survivor talk, and people going out to a pub that night, and they're like, "Do you want to come to the pub, bro?" I was like, "Nope. I'm not going to the pub. I said, literally, I'm going to stay in this hotel. I'm going to have 3 beers, and then I'm going to bed, because there is no way I'm being." Jared saw how easy it was to twist my arm to go and have a cigarette before we came on there. It's that easy. I was like,
I wasn't even trying.
I was like, I'm not going. He's literally just having a couple of times, and I was like, no. Do you know what? It's that easy. And I was like, do you know what? There is no way. There is no way. And things like that. I'm so proud of us. Not just because that. Going with a hangover after a mad night out, to go and speak to someone like that, and then witness the museum, and then obviously going into the church, there was no way I was giving any of those people who have gone through such atrocity the disrespect of having a hangover or not being my. And then obviously, I was working in hotels at that time, and then when you hear a hotel in Israel with no music, no nothing, because they honour this so much, things like that make me very, very, very proud to be Jewish and of Israel. It's like I've got a load of tattoos, and the ones on my upper body are all Hebrew. I've got the Shema, first line of the Shema and the Star of David on my heart. Yeah. And I've got my grandparents. I've got my grandparents when their memorials on my arms and my on my side here. I'm very, very proud of it. And my grandpa was in that war. That things like that with Holocaust Memorial Day, the way that it's honoured and respected. Like even when the cars pull over for the sirens, that is one of the most craziest but most respected things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's a very humbling thing. And like I also have a similar tattoo. I have a Star of David right above my heart. My aunt actually designed it before I went out to get it. There's a story behind that, but I'll save that story for another time. You know, I feel like we're very similar in a lot of ways because my grandfather, as well as a big part of, you know, my Jewish identity, a big part of it came from him, you know, and he passed away this year. And, you know, if anybody is watching, yeah, and there's actually a memorial episode to any of our viewers if you want to go check it out. It's just called I Miss You, Saba, and it's in there in the channel. It's one of the last recordings I have of him before while he was still able to speak. But like he was a huge part of my Jewish identity, and like I don't know, I'm just trying to say like I appreciate like your story and about your granddad and how much he means to you, because like, I just want to let you know it's the same with me. Like I learned to be Jewish from him. I learned to be proud of it from him. Like I grew up on the stories of those who fought at Matzada, of like all the suffering we've been through and the pride and how we're still here and how we came right out of the Holocaust to being independent once more. Yep. A lot of my pride came from him.
Well, the thing with my grandpa as well is I only ever had the one grandpa because my dad's dad died before my mum got married to him. So I was lucky enough to have my two grandparents. My last grandparent, my grandma, like I said, I moved out to here, Canada, December the 1st, 2017. And my grandma, who was married to my grandpa on my mum's side, they've been married for 65 years. 65 years. And my grandma was going through early dementia. And my grandpa really wanted to get moved into a home because he was in his 90s and had to look after my grandma with anxiety, with depression, dementia. And he was just exhausted. But anyway, he passed away. And then my grandma was in this home, and we kept her in this home for a very nice home for a little while, but she was going downhill rapidly. And I went to say goodbye to my grandma before I moved out to Canada. And the reason I was going to say goodbye is I didn't think it was going to happen all of a sudden, but I never knew when I came back. And literally, I moved here December the 1st, and December the 10th, she died. So literally, I was in Canada for 10 days. That's a fly right back with my wife. So, I mean, having grandparents are the greatest thing. When you only have one grandpa, which I only had, that guy literally, he was my Moses. He could split the Red Sea. He could do literally anything. He is the greatest thing to ever happen in my life, without a doubt.
And may they all rest in peace. You know. I've also lost all my grandparents, unfortunately, but I was lucky enough to spend such valuable time with them, and I think each one of them had a big impact, not only on my life but all their grandchildren and their children. They were very, very special people from a very, very special time as well, I think, you know. Like rebuilding after World War II and all the things that, you know, I can remember my nan telling me stories of the Blitz, and, you know, my other nan telling me about how she grew up in Bucharest and managed to get through the war. And my other granddad was all the way from Aleppo, Syria, and he told me how he made his journey in 1945 to what was the British Mandate of Palestine before Israel, and, you know, all the journeys that they went through. They were some really hardy people, you know. They were really they had something, they were built of something else, you know. I really, really miss them. And yeah, may they all rest in peace. And
well, we're very lucky. We're very lucky by the end of it. You look at how many people can you say that you have three people talking and they had their grandparents for like into their 30s or into their late 20s.
Yeah,
all their grandparents. It's very, very rare that you will hear that. I have friends that lost their people don't remember some of their grandparents because they died when they were like 4 or 5 years old. and didn't get the full experience of having it. So we're very, very lucky on that note.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm
100%.
hoping that I'll still have like at my grandmother at least when I'm in my late 20s. Like I'm only 23.
Okay.
Yeah, Jared's still young. You're still young.
Yeah, I'm a young one.
You are, my man. You are. Look at me at 42. 42, man. I'm almost double you.
You're too
Lucky hell. Jesus.
I mean, look.
Brian, don't worry, mate. You're looking good. You're looking. You're
the Dead Sea products, mate. The Dead Sea products.
Yeah, I was about to say, like you're. I mean, I would have only guessed like maybe around Amir's age. Actually, I wouldn't have guessed you're in your 40s.
Amir, how old are you?
Yeah, I'm 32, mate. I'm 32.
Oh,
so
mate.
mate,
Jared, you say all the nicest things.
You got to jump on me. You got to jump on me there, Brian.
Mate.
But one of the things I wanted to get into here, is the way we met through the We Are Tottenham boys.
Yeah.
Obviously, Irish Hotspur as well, the Harris Army, and the Spurs family, really. The Tottenham Hotspur, and it's not something I've actually talked about on the podcast, but I'm a huge, huge Tottenham fan. I've been going to see Spurs since I was a kid. Ginola, Klinsmann, Mabbott, these guys, Stephen Carr, Ian Walker making mistakes.
Mate, I had a season ticket for 10 years when Ian Walker was in goal. Yeah. And as you know, during that time, we were useless. We were useless. So my block that I used to sit with it, because when you have a season ticket for a few years, you get talking, all the people keep the tickets. We were so bad that we used to have a bet every day, every game, for £5 to see how many times Ian Walker would do that with his hair in a match. That became the entertainment. That was like, listen, we hardly ever score. So let's see how many times he does that in a match. And literally, that was the most fun, because it was like, let's see who could win. I think it was up to about £100. I think there was 10 to 20 of us. It was up to £100 every game, just to see how many times Ian Walker does it.
That's crazy. That's so funny, mate. That is so funny and so typical of British humor, which, classic. And the amount of laughs I've had at Spurs over the years, mate. Oh. The fans with Aurelio Gomez and the thing, and all that. Oh, it's too much. It's just
the humor's fantastic.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I can remember the funniest thing that happened at the Lane. Was Tottenham versus Braga, a Europa League tie, and they came over. And for some reason, their keeper had short shorts on, like proper short shorts, like booty shorts on. So
the man has pride in his body. Let him have it.
So every time this keeper got the ball, the whole crowd were just like... Every time, and like by the end, like he was loving it. He was clapping to the crowd. He was like, hey, and such great nights at the Lane. And also, I got to mention this one as well, because this is something that will lead us on into my next question. The fans in football are unique and special. And it's something that we all have in common all across the world. And there's a bond there that breaks countries and religions and race and whatever else you want it is to divide. I can unite. And one of the most beautiful things I ever saw at the Lane, I don't know if you remember, we played Werder Bremen in the Champions League. I can't remember the year, but we mullered them. We were very good. It was in the year with Inter Milan and everything. Yeah. We beat them 3-0. We beat them 3-0. We played amazing. Werder Bremen didn't even have a chance. And at the end of the match, the German fans stayed and they clapped the Spurs fans out of the stadium for the way we supported our team and the way we got behind our team. And I just thought, look at that. Look at that. How amazing. British and Germans together in a stadium. A few years back, you were dropping bombs on each other in London and Dresden and whatever else. And here you are together. Great game of football. Even though you lost, you're clapping our fans off. I just thought it was a really, really beautiful moment.
It was a bit. What you got to add to that as well was not only was it England and Germany, but it's a predominantly well-known Jewish supported club.
True.
Speaking
Yeah.
German. So there's double meanings to that. There's anyone around the world that knows
Very
anything about
true.
Tottenham Hotspur. One of the things they know is it's predominantly Jewish, predominantly Jewish. In support and unfortunately ownership because the guy's a moron. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing to see, and football unites.
Yeah.
Football unites. I mean, just with my English accent,
Yeah.
wherever I go in the world, and people
Yeah.
start talking to me, within realizing that I'm English, within 3 questions, what football
Yeah.
team do you support?
Exactly.
Or you Tottenham, or you Arsenal, or you Liverpool. Within 3 questions,
Yeah.
what football team do you support?
Who do you support? Yeah. It's an instant intro to like anyone in the world, and it's such a great thing to have. And one of my best times I ever had on a football pitch was actually in Indonesia, where we'd got to know some of the locals. And you know, the guy at the hostel was like, "Yeah, you know, we play football here every day." I was like, "Really? Oh, we'd love a kickabout." You know what I mean? So he said, "Oh, just go down to the local pitch, you know, and I'll just join in with those guys." So we went down. We ended up playing with kids there on the village. You know, they've all got shirts of Messi, Ronaldo. We're playing with the kids, and then the elders of the village came and they wanted to boot the younger kids off. They were like, "No, it's our time now. We want to play with the guys from England. We want to play with the British guys. Go, kids." And we were like, "Oh, this is so unfair. These kids are actually good, and we want to play with them." So we made a deal with the elders on the village. We were like, "Look, we'll carry on playing, but you have to integrate the kids in your team." So we switched up the teams. It was village elders with the youngers, just having a game of football. And football, one of the other things that people don't realize, it's not one of these sports that you need to be a millionaire to play. It's not something that you need a lot of equipment. You just need a ball. That's it, a ball. You don't need anything else. You know, put the jumpers down. You got 2 goals there. Go and play. And I just think that we need to use football as a tool to try and unite. The same way that there's a push against racism, against hatred, that we're seeing is having an impact. It's having an impact. You know, we're still seeing it, unfortunately, but we're not seeing it at the scale that we saw in the early 90s and 80s and the hooliganism. We're not seeing that as much. So we need to tackle it. And I was wondering if through football we can affect change even more than that, even push it to putting pressure on companies to end conflicts, on countries to end conflicts, on countries to take responsibility for the environment and ecological disasters. Can we use that platform? Like Marcus Rashford, he used his platform as a footballer to provide school meals for hundreds of thousands of kids. It was an amazing achievement. And now I don't like Marcus Rashford because he's United and I can't stand him. And I hate United. I don't like him.
Wait, I thought you said football brings people together.
But yes. But Rashford, what he done, I applaud, and I would love it if more players did those kind of things. I think it could be great. How can we use football more as a tool, and maybe even use it here in the Israel-Palestine and Arab conflict? How can we integrate it?
Football is. Do you know what? I don't just say it because it's my country's sport and I love it and it's the best sport in the world. Football is the language of the world. I'm not just saying that. It's like literally everyone can talk football. It doesn't like when you're in different countries. As soon as you talk football, people may know a little bit of English, or people may know, or to communicate, or via doing like a charade, like doing acting and mimicking. It has so much to do. And you talk about what Rashford does. What also goes under the radar is what One Matter does in his organisation. I don't know if people know a lot about what One Matter does. He started his own organisation, and he's got quite a lot of footballers following now, where 1% of their wages, I know it's only a fraction, but 1% is better than nothing to start off with, of their wages go to feed the homeless worldwide. Like, not just in England, but to people on the streets or food banks or whatever. And that's just 1% of their wages, which, I mean, 1% of my wages wouldn't help anyone, but 1% of their wages and other footballers can have a huge impact.
Massive, yeah.
And it's not, do you know what, football, I honestly think football could be not the saviour of the world, I mean, that's extreme, but has such a big role to play in everything, and really can. You look at it. I mean, you talk about like how we met on We Are Tottenham TV, and then I have got my own channel, which is written below. But especially during this lockdown, like I love Ben and Simeon. I love Ben and Simeon with all my heart, and I've wanted to go on We Are Tottenham TV for a while, but was always, don't know why, but I always got scared. And me, I'm the loudest person, especially when it comes to Tottenham, that you ever find. I don't know what. Maybe it was doing this like because it's open to YouTube and they had 70,000 subscribers, and it's like, oh my god. But the work they did for people over the pandemic, like constantly giving content, and it's also brought David Harris doing his own channel, me doing my own channel, brought me with Matt Hayes, with so many other people. That, as you said, we have created this amazing community where we have group chats or whatever. We make sure we don't conflict with each other's times, or if we need support and help, we're there to do it. And that's us trying to help each other get either that sounded painful. That
was my knee.
Lucky you're not in America and you have your Clique card then, aren't you? But yeah, so but it's just what football can do. Not just the players that are actually playing it, the sport, YouTube. There are so many things it can do, and I mean, I know for a fact that, not that it'd be this, but if you went into the middle of Israel or on the border and said, listen, forget all, not saying this was happening all the way, but you spoke to the civilians and just said, listen, we're having a game of football, who wants to play? There would be so many people that just want to play football with each other and just have a kick about, have a laugh. And that's what football does. It brings, like, you look at it, the Euros have just been on. All right, it didn't get the worldwide appeal that the World Cup does for obvious reasons. But even here, all right, I've got my English friends or whatever, it took over. Forget the Copa America, which took up, but it was like, Euros are on, oh my god, and it was a fantastic Euros, we've got to say. Some of the games, the refereeing was fantastic. The games were, I mean, when we beat Germany, England went mad, especially after drawing with Scotland. And England, I mean, England is the gauge to see. When football is going well, there's nowhere better in the world to be than in England when England are doing well in a tournament. You will not find a better place. You could be on the beach in Mauritius or on top of Mount Masada or Niagara Falls. It will not beat England doing well in a football tournament. And that's what football does. That's what football does. And that there has to be a way where even YouTubers could even try and get a football. You know, it's got to start. Listen, these plans always start from somewhere, and that somewhere is from ground zero. And then you have to build it up gradually. So I think honestly, football could have a huge part to play. And like you were saying, like at the very beginning, this is where it kind of ties in with what we're in. When we were saying at the beginning, with it's kind of the civilians want peace, but we're not being listened to. If you look at it, what happened with the Super League a few months ago, when all the fans got together and were like, no, it ain't happening. We're not allowing this. And you saw, what's his name? Woodward had to leave Manchester United. All right, we're trying to get Levy out. When I go back to the NFL protest, oh my God, am I going to be heard? But it just goes to show, and I know, as Jared said, with American sports, if they're not happy with their owners, they will know about it. They will know. There will be protests. There's none of this. Oh, let's sit down and there will be protests, and it just goes to show now, like you were saying, that there is some kind of way where people power is becoming more instrumental in modern society.
That's it.
It's starting to take effect, as we saw with the Super League, as you see with other things going on. So who knows? Hopefully, in time, and hopefully it's not too far away, this will happen where governments will start listening.
Amen to that, Brian. Amen to that, bro. Because that's what I think we need. Because we can do as much as we can. I thought about this a lot, and I actually had a conversation with a buddy of mine about this. That we at the bottom, we can try and do as much as we can, and we can do projects, and we can do charity, and we can do as many things as we can. But we're just one person doing that little bit. We have to get together as a group and really push push.
Yeah, of course.
Otherwise, these guys aren't going to get off their asses and do anything.
It's like when you look at
that's how the power dynamics of democracy like work. Like one of the ways you have power is through numbers. And like that's always been true throughout like human history. The only way to get governments to do something is to show that you have the numbers to back it. Even in a dictatorship, if like enough people go out and do stuff, the dictatorship will change something or just fall apart. Like you saw it in the Eastern Bloc, you saw it in Syria, you saw it in Egypt and Tunisia. And like you can see just the effects of that. That's the point of protesting. And anybody who is enough in their convictions to go out into the street for days at a time to protest to change the world for a better. I mean, God bless you, really, if you're out there and you're doing that.
exactly.
Like, we got to pull people into it.
Well, you look at it. Do you know what? And I always use this terminology as well. It's when you look at something as minuscule as ants. You look at ants by themselves. You're like, what the hell do you do in life? And then you go look at an ant colony, and you see how something so small, but working together. You're like, my God, those things that I saw in between the pavement are doing this. Like, and it just goes to show that the little things, you get the numbers. It starts building, and that it's got to start from ground zero. And this is, I honestly think in years to come, it's going to have such a huge impact. Like social media has taken over the world kind of thing, the impact that has.
Yeah.
Now, social media, obviously, I've come to learn that with doing my YouTube and the channel growing. It not just for the channel, but individually, it can be a thing of greatness. Like I wouldn't have met Amir. And I wouldn't have met you, Gerard, through Amir, from being on a show that is so completely different to this, that connects my passion and Amir's passion. We're from England together, but now, obviously, Israel, Canada, never met him face to face, and here we are doing so social media has a lot of good to do, but it also, as we know, for every good it does, unfortunately, there's 10 bad.
Many negatives.
And this is what happens with that. But I honestly reckon, with this kind of, I wouldn't say movement just yet, but with this process of people power becoming a bit more accepted or a bit more the norm, it's got to have a positive change. It's got to.
I really hope so, Brian, mate. I really, really do hope so. And I think, just quickly with regards to that social media stuff, it's a tool at the end of the day. It's like a car. It's like anything else, like a hammer. You can hit someone over the head with a hammer, or you can hammer a nail. Yeah. So it's up to us to learn to use that tool properly, and I think that will come with time. Like you said, we got, it's a new thing for us. It's a new thing. It's new technology. Slowly, step by step,
toy to play with.
Yeah, we'll get there. And just speaking on numbers, there, you mentioned numbers as well, Brian. I just want to make sure that we get a nice plug-in for your channel, because we do want to get your numbers up and your subs up. And of course, we're working our way to that 1K as well. We're really on the push for it, guys. So, please do share out our podcast with people that you think will enjoy. And, it's been a real pleasure having you on today, Brian, honestly. And I really hope that we can meet up eventually when you manage to get over here to Israel, or I come out to Canada.
A billion percent, mate. And first of all, before I plug the channel, honestly, I mean it when I say, I do a lot of podcasts and I do a lot of stuff, but it's 99.9999999% Tottenham Hotspur related. And that's something I'm very, 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 very passionate about. It's my number one. Like you were saying with football, it doesn't matter. My dad used to say to me, family come and go, friends come and go, partners will come and go. Your whole life will change, but there's one constant in your life, and it'll be your first love and your last love, and it's your football team. And that's how big this, especially in England, this is how it becomes. And so Tottenham is always, I love talking about them. All right, they're the owners, and if you do come and subscribe to my channel, I'll go into detail in a minute. You'll hear me very, very anti Daniel Levy. I cannot stand the man. Believe me, the things I'd like to do to him. Yeah, but yeah. So, but what I was trying to get at is honestly, been an absolute honour and pleasure to come onto your show and talk about this. And whenever you guys need me to appear, or you have a spot you're thinking of doing more about football, or you want an English perspective, or just Amir, hit me up. I am there. I've always said to you, when it comes to this, I don't care the time, I don't care the date, I don't care if it's 3:30 in the morning, I don't care. Whenever you need me for this channel, I will always be available for such an incredible cause. But yeah, my channel. It was Tottenham Away. It was Tottenham Away, where that channel's still going, where we had over, I think we're up to 1,400 subscribers. And unfortunately, we had to split amicably. But what happened is it was me and Brian Ireland here in Toronto and two of my schoolmates back home in England. Mm-hmm. But now working a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 here, and the pandemic coming out, people are going back to work now. So the time difference and everything became a huge obstacle of committing to shows and everything. So what we've done is Tottenham Away is still going. We're still going to appear on their shows and whatever. But Brian Ireland and I have started our own channel, which is called Tottenham on Tour, where we are talking 99.999 again about Tottenham Hotspur. We're going to have podcasts. We're going to do live shows. We're going to have Tottenham Hotspur Dream 11s. We're going to have a lot of fan interaction. We want to have it make it more the fans' channel than our channel. And rather than having the subjects we want to talk about, we'll have the subjects that the subscribers want to talk about, so they feel included and feel subscribed. So yeah, anyone crazy enough on here to support Tottenham, follow us at Tottenham on Tour. You will not be disappointed. And like I said, guys, honestly, I can't tell you how much of a pleasure and honour it's been to come on the channel.
Pleasure's all ours, mate. Pleasure's all ours, really.
Loved having you here. It was great. So before we go, I just want to point two things out. One, Paul, I see you down there. I see you in the chat, Paul. I just can't type right now. I'm having a thing where like I don't have it. I lost administrative positions and Amir hasn't given them back. He doesn't know what to do. Paul is for you guys. Paul is my friend. His name is DJ Kwasi. We grew up together. He's my best friend growing up. Still my best friend. He's a great guy. It's so great to have you watching, Paul. I just wish you check the channel a bit more often, so that way you wouldn't be in at the end. But you know. Anyway,
Brian, mate, honestly, thanks again for coming on, and I just want to thank you for sharing your personal story as well, man. Like I think one thing that we could maybe even do another episode about is how you got over your alcoholism that you dealt with. You know, I think 13 years sober now, is it, Brian?
13 years sober, and all I will say is in Israel, you will never believe the amount of Imperial vodka and Keglovich and Iceberg. Mate, me and my best mate, we had a penthouse in Lat, and we had a deal. We had a supermarket down right below us, and the deal was never ever can there be less than 8 bottles of vodka in the freezer.
Oh Jesus!
Oh God, I can't even drink vodka. I mean, if you said whiskey, I'd be all over it. But you know,
do you know what? Because it was as well because alcohol is so cheap out there compared to England. It's like we were buying a bottle of Imperial for I think it was about £2, 16 shekels it was back in 2005 or 6, and it was just ridiculous. And then literally, we were made the most we ever done. Me, him, and a couple of mates went on a 4-day bender and did 28 bottles of vodka in 4 days. So like that, 7 bottles, like 24 hours, maybe occasionally sleeping at different times. But literally, that works out as 7 bottles each within 4 days.
Lad, don't take this the wrong way, mate. But I'm kind of like privileged to be here chatting to you, considering that amount of drinking, buddy.
Yeah, with it being so cheap, that's what it was when I came out. You remember when you moved to Israel and you come out with English pounds. Back then, when the exchange rate was like 8.1 shekels to the pound. Yeah, I was living life like a goddamn king.
Well, it's different now, Brian, mate. It's different. You won't be. It's a whole bit different from back in those days.
Big time. Big time. I can appreciate more of Israel without seeing it in double vision or literally not even remembering what I did. That's the thing. I mean, like I said, me and my wife will be out to Israel at some point soon. We'll definitely meet up with you guys because it still is it is a beautiful country, and I love Israel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brian.
Real great to see you.
Yeah, anytime. And hopefully Spurs are in the same competition as the Israeli side, Hapoel Beersheva. So you could be coming out here even earlier to come and see the Spurs and the mighty Hapoel Beersheva as well.
Yeah,
So,
do you know what? I think I'd have to be on my best behaviour for my wife to say, listen, do you fancy going to Israel because Spurs are playing? I'd have to word that. I'd have to word that very, very well. But yeah, it could be a good reason.
Great. Nice one, lad. Thank you all our viewers for tuning in tonight. And please don't forget to leave some comments and subscribe if you haven't already.
And share the video.
And share it. Definitely get it out there. And everyone, have a lovely week. Wishing everyone a
Shavuot
week.
Hold on, guys. The episode ain't over. It's not over till I say it's over.
It's
You're
true.
gonna see how this show works, Brian. But before I go, Anna is going to be graduating soon. Yeah, you hear that, Amir?
She is. She is indeed. It's going to be very soon.
Yeah. I'm upset that you're not as proud as I am.
Well, I'm very proud, but she's not with us now. So, like,
yeah, I know, but I want everybody to say congratulations. Oh, you made me sad. Anyway, I'm going to smack the video out. I'm very upset with you.
Again,
all right, you better get ready, Amir.
I'm ready. I'm always ready.
I'm gonna end all of existence.